us tonight. We have our paper reviewer. It's great to have a chat with him. It's James Erskine. You can get further details for him on the website wearerocket.co.uk and also on James Erskine on Twitter as well. Thanks for staying with us, James. Let's delve into your next story tonight then.
So you will remember that occasionally I peruse the business pages, and that stuff fascinates me, but I'm also aware that it doesn't fascinate everybody. So what I've tried to do here is take a business story that kind of has, I think, wider societal questions that we should ask ourselves. So do you know who Etsy are? ETSY?
Yes.
Have you ever been on? Yeah,
yes.
So they kind of encourage craft and good, if you like, retailers, but they're very much down to independent retailers making responsibly sourced. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Individual creativity. Now, this week, Etsy bought for £1.1 billion.
Oh, here we go.
Or $1.6 billion. A portal, a website, a network called Depop.
Yes.
And what Depop does is they allow people, individuals, to sell pre-loved or second-hand fashion. Brilliant. They have some first-stage fashion on there. And some of the questions I think that this raises, I mean, it's an interesting business decision for Etsy. It's rumoured that 90% of Depop's users are under 26.
Nice.
If you like, you go on Depop for second-hand fashion. You go there for streetwear, vintage, repurposed material. You might buy a purse made of sweet wrappers on there.
Lovely.
And what it's doing, and it's interesting how this fits into your previous point, Sonny, is it's encouraging entrepreneurialism in young people, because what Depop really encourage is that everybody is a brand.
Excellent.
So anybody can create these fashion garments that they can go on, and they can then look at the price and create a profit.
Right.
And they're very keen that sellers should promote themselves as their own brands. It's quite personality driven. Mm-hmm. Now, Etsy went public in 2017. They've always wanted to focus on good, but they've often struggled to reach a young audience. Now, what I also think is fascinating is that shoppers slowly seem to be moving away from fast fashion and towards sustainable fashion. Younger people are quite keen to explore the environmental elements, recognizing sustainable fashion. And it's interesting that this might be the next big thing in fashion. We're moving away from fast fashion. Also, there was another story this week that actually there's a new scheme that allows authors to make money on the second-hand purchases of their books. So I wonder if this raises questions. Are we becoming more conscientious as a society? And are second-hand things or pre-loved things becoming more important to us? So and where might this take us?
I know that if you look at some of your garments, and there's been a lot of research in this. I only know this because when I became, when I was doing my research on veganism, and a lot of the things that I learned more than the animal welfare, which is always there, is how much it costs my burger to produce, right? And then from there it went to how much does my cotton take to produce that, and then it was the jeans and what they have to do to make these pair of jeans that I'm wearing right now, and how disposable they are, and how much it will be bad for the environment. So never throw away a pair of jeans, repurpose them into a hat, into something else, use them as pillows or whatever. So I was already on that vein because I am doing a lot of research in my diet. And do you think that's a key part of how we treat our environment, and also how we change and we learn from one thing and then we fall into another, and it sort of has that knock-on effect, thinking I can actually do more than just change my diet. I can maybe, keep eating what I want to eat. Like if I want to have a burger, I'll have a burger, but then I'll keep my clothes, and, almost offsetting their carbon footprint and what have you, just trying to help the planet heal itself.
And completely. And what these solutions is, they do a lot of that.
Yes.
So second-hand books really works well, and one can see that second-hand fashion. It's not without some questions, though. So let me give you this as an example.
Go ahead.
If we have a load of under 26-year-olds buying all the clothes from the charity shop down the road with a view to repurposing them and making a profit, the people that are currently buying clothes to wear at the charity shop are going to be priced out in the market.
But
Do you see what I mean?
But then if you see some of the brands that have taken a big hit on the high street, they've been replaced by one individual juggernaut that has actually made it cheaper for me to buy a T-shirt than iron one.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
when you say price out the market, maybe these charity shops like have got these vintage clothes and what have you, they might be able to put the prices up a little bit more so that they can get more money for charity. And people who you're saying that are priced out can go to these shops that are literally making clothes like a T-shirt or a shirt for £2. I mean, how's that even possible?
You make a very, very good argument, Sonny, as you always do. Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, the other thing that's interesting is the entrepreneurial nature of this. So they're encouraging young people to do something to affect them and build a brand. Whatever that means to young. I mean, it's obviously it's understood because some do it incredibly well. But literally, Depop is created so that people can deliver customers via their own social media presence.
Of course.
So it's a fascinating case in business, in fashion, and in the kind of wider society around secondhand goods or pre-loved goods, as we're told to call them now.
So when we look at the strategy behind this, social media is a key part for the success of this this kind of setup, right? And at the moment, social media is free to people who feel their personal information isn't that important. I'm not doing anything wrong, so here you go. Here's all my locations. Here's what I click on. Here's whatever it is that I'm doing, right? So right now, people aren't seeing the implications of the privacy aspect of it at this time. But as we get into this idea of this is the answer to everything, and if the governments get involved and we start seeing more regulations to these companies, we've already seen the big change in the multinationals paying 15% in some of the big countries, and that does include social media platforms that might have to, pay this tax as well. That's just announced today. When we look at this model and the reliance on the social media platforms, and you've seen how YouTube has changed their whole ecosystem from the time it started to where we are today. It's almost like a broadcaster now. And,
hugely,
so when we see that, do you think that in itself could be a false sense of security and people taking that for granted, or do they need to build their own platforms like you do, like encourage people to go to your website and what have you, even though it's a smaller platform, but you're bringing that following with you so you have those loyal fans?
You're asking a hugely kind of big marketing question.
Because this is what it's all is. Everything you're talking about today with this business story, it is about marketing. Without these social media platforms, this doesn't work at all.
So what without marketing or without a story behind your purchase, then you are just on a race to the bottom to see who can produce it cheapest, right? So if you can if you can see somebody else that is behind a brand, or if you know what a brand stands for, then actually it makes the purchase more warming, more encouraging, and it isn't a race to the bottom. There are still brands out there that are disrupting all sorts of different markets. If you look at the car market, there's motorway.co.uk who are very much positioning themselves as friends of people that want to sell their car. You look at Depop, where they're kind of asking people to embrace the Depop brand but actually grow their own self-brands in order to sell product and to sell it on. And again, you're quite right. What it does is it elevates a purchase from being a $2.99 T-shirt that doesn't mean anything to a $12.99 T-shirt that means something. And I think that's important.
I totally agree. I mean, this is a new world that we're living in, and I think as soon as schools start teaching tax and how tax works and contracts, I think we're going to be in the right space so that the kids of tomorrow, when we talk about the education, going back to your first story, is certain things that need to be, I guess, introduced to prepare our children for the future that's forward, as opposed to saying, say yes, tick the box, oh, you know a bit of history, and now go and work in a factory. That's basically what, was almost like, if you see, that was what the industrial schooling was, almost prepare these kids for those kind of jobs. And trust me, there's not that many, study groups that teach you about taxing and teaching you how it works and where it goes and how it's broken down, your wage packet, until you go to school, work.
Yeah, completely. And Shay, I'd love to hear what your thoughts on second-hand clothes. Do you say second-hand or do you say pre-loved? I.e., do you live the branding and would you ever use one of these websites?
I say vintage, darling, and I've always supported it.
Of course you say vintage.
And I've always supported it. I've always loved it. In fact, only last weekend, I was out shopping in Egham and I went to a charity shop and I bought 4 new outfits with their labels on for the price that I would have bought them for 1, if that makes sense.
Wow,
I'm not going to share brand names, but I was like, oh, I'm a happy lady today. I've always loved it. My first ever job when my first school, job when I was in A-levels was working in Woolworths, but also my first job, volunteering, I worked in Hounslow High Street for Mary Curie Cancer Research. They had a shop there, and I loved it. I was fascinated by the charity shop. I used to go every single Saturday morning. I gave up my time for, I think it was 2.5 years. I loved the people. I loved the fact that you could buy things, but also you were helping a great cause. For me, it was like a win-win. So from then on, I've been very fortunate where I can go and buy expensive things, but I'm quite happy and I love buying pre-owned things and I'm absolutely fine with it.
Yeah.
I really have no qualms about it at all. And actually, I think apps, not just Depop, there are quite a number of them.
Absolutely, there are.
Apps like Depop and Vinted and a couple of others have made it cool, I would say, for people to upcycle. In the past, I'll be very frank and honest about it, James. I did have girlfriends who were like, what do you mean you wouldn't have bought that in a charity shop? I was like, yeah. I remember once we went out for a picnic with girlfriends in Hyde Park, and I had this amazing leather handbag, and it's kind of like one of those. Sunny, how do you describe it? With the satchel. It's like that's it. It's a satchel.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's a satchel, tan leather handbag, and all
Proper
my girlfriends,
leather.
all my girlfriends, oh my god, love it, love it, love it. Where is it from? And I didn't tell them until the end of the night. I was like, actually, I found that in a charity shop in Camden, and one of my friends was like, oh my god, she was so shocked.
That someone would throw that away.
And I said to her, what's the issue? But I had to open her eyes up to it. I'm talking about years ago, whereas now I think these apps have made it just like cool, commonplace. Yeah. Everyone does it. We have amazing vintage shops, charity shops, upcycling shops. I love it, James.
It's something you alluded to earlier on as well, James, that, the people that go to these charity shops, maybe they can't afford to go to other shops. And there's this stigma around them that is being lifted, I think, more than ever before.
I would agree.
Yeah,
and the word you used was upcycling, and that should have been the one that I did. It's a bit of an Americanism, but they often say upscaling as well.
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do.
In America, they call it they call them
thrift shops.
Yeah.
Yes, they
you
do.
got vintage.
Right.
I mean, the amount of vintage shops we have, sadly, some of them are closed, but there's tons in Soho, and it's just cool to go in there. And you can one of the best pair of Dr. Martens that I ever found. I couldn't buy them because they were the wrong size.
That was it.
Were in a vintage shop, and I was like, I really want these, but they just didn't fit. Otherwise, I would have happily got them home.
I found a Japanese traditional armor in one of these shops, and with the mask and everything. Is the one that the one that was worn in The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. So they had one of these in this vintage shop, and it was like, I need to buy this. And then Shay goes, where are you going to put it? You don't need that. You're never going to wear it. It's not right. And then she didn't let me buy it. I was so upset.
Yeah.
It would have been a nice art piece. With that said, James, it's always a pleasure. I mean, we've kept you longer than your time. So thank you.
Talking to you tonight.
Guys, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me on the programme. It's sounding brilliant, by the way. So thank you.
Appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get to catch up with you next month and have you in the studio as soon as we possibly are allowed to have guests in the studio, James.
Exactly.
Looking forward to it already, and love to your little one as well. So,
Thank you.
James.
Take care, James. Pleasure having James Erskine on the show. If you'd like further details for James, you can go to his website, wearerocket.co.uk. Alternatively, you can find him on Twitter @James Erskine.
So from one rocket man to